much when I hit 30, that was when my awareness started to expand, when I got interested in the art of Jin Shin, which is an energy healing modality that totally changed my life because it showed me a whole perspective realm that I had not been aware of. I'd had, acupressure sessions or things like that, but this, getting to actually study and to be able to work on myself in this way was life-changing.
Welcome to the Infinite Earth Body Podcast, where we talk about bodies, healing, pleasure, and share stories of embodiment on Earth. Hi, I'm your host, Maya. I'd like to start by taking a few moments to ground, root into our connection to the Earth, call in the support of our most benevolent ancestors and guides, and set the intention for this shared space of connection to be dedicated to the liberation of all beings. Today, I'm so excited to introduce Terna to the podcast. Terna Tilley-Gyado is a Nigerian-Liberian, US-raised woman passionately committed to healing and evolution of self, love, inner liberation, and joy. A citizen of the world and passionate advocate for progress, equality, positivity, and love. Terna is a life coach and Jin Shin Jyutsu practitioner located in Western Massachusetts. The underlying unifier of each of those roles is Facilitator Healer. Terna's goal as a healer is to support individuals in answering the question, who am I at the next level of my personal evolution? Together, she explores their answers by recovering and discovering truths, potential, and authenticity using the modality that best allows people to access and be in conversation with their heart and spirit. Terna has served her community as a clinical trauma responder, working with young people impacted by community violence, as a New York City public school teacher, at the United Nations through a national anti-bullying nonprofit, and as a co-writer and performer for the show Coming Out Muslim: Radical Acts of Love. Terna holds master's degrees in counseling and global mental health, international conflict analysis, and adolescent education. She has lived on 3 continents, making a life for herself in 6 different countries, learning about the vast and beautiful diversity in cultures and the nature of the human spirit every step of the way. Terna's life of travel, education, and advocacy has led her to a deep awareness of health, healing, and overall wellness in herself and others. She is interested in the inner revolutions we all experience and how they show up in relationships in our inner dichotomies. Example, fierce and tender, hard and soft, seen and unseen. Terna, welcome to the Infinite Earth Body Podcast.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure. I'm really excited to be here with you, Maya.
Yeah, thank you. So how is your body feeling today?
Wow. How is it feeling today? My body is a strong body that moves through a lot of pain. And so in this moment, I'm feeling that touch of pain and some fatigue, but also just a steady presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What does healing mean to you?
Wow, that's a mega question. It's a mega question. And I think it's meant different things to me at different points in my life as someone who has had injuries and all kinds of things since I was young. I think nobody asked me actually what healing meant to me at those points in my life. I had, a few surgeries when I was a teenager. And there was a lot of physical therapy and you need to go here and do this and da-da-da-da. But I don't think anyone ever asked me what healing was. And so I thought it was just the thing gets better. There was no framework around the layers that contributed to the manifestation of the thing, or sometimes I don't even think it's about that. Sometimes it's about, what does being in this injury and navigating it, what are you supposed to get from that, you know? And having grown up with a doctor as a mother, you know, interestingly, we didn't talk about that. So it's been a journey to discover what healing actually means to me. And I think at this point in my life, healing means to me wholeness. It's about having the fullest access to my wholeness that I can have. You know, it's about being able to feel alive and connected in however my flesh is. You know, it doesn't mean that there aren't challenges physically or on whatever level. It doesn't mean that things are perfect, or it doesn't mean any of that. It just means I got access to myself, you know, in the deepest way on all the levels that I want to have access to myself. And in my work with other people, that's really what I'm going for. It's like, how can we support you to have the fullest access to your whole being, you know, and really move away from the invitations to fragmentation that are so ubiquitous, so everywhere. You know what I mean? Everywhere you turn, there's an invitation to fragmentation. So healing to me means that we don't fall into that place of forgetfulness about the wholeness that we always is always present, no matter what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what have some of the most important parts of your personal healing journey been?
I would say, you know, probably the most, one of the most profound experiences of healing that I've had has been around my ancestors. And as someone who was kind of snatched from my paternal root, at a very young age, that was this void, really, that I experienced. I could feel that something had been severed. And I spent my whole life looking for, how can I get back that thing that I somehow knew that I had, you know, as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old. And so getting to actually get to a place where that reconnection was made, that was the most profound healing journey. And honestly, some of that came through, it all came through spirituality. It came through, you know, I often say Islam has taken me pretty much everywhere that I've wanted to go, has come through Islam. You know, that was how I met the folks that got me to soul shifting. And through that particular piece of my spiritual journey, that was really how the root came back. So, you know, and it was about the fibroids that I had and getting to learn some of the things I carried that I didn't know that I carried, you know, and getting to learn that I come from a lineage where there have been 20 some odd continuous generations of child loss, and getting to learn about all of the grief and the goodbyes, the forced goodbyes that so many of my foremothers had to say, you know, and the places that they couldn't let go of. And, you know, so there's just so many layers to that. It's also been about learning about the power of my ancestors, and just like, you know, how profound their protection and support has been, even when I had no idea, you know, that they were doing whatever they were doing. But just to come into the awareness that they see me and they hold me as their child, you know, has been incredibly healing. You know, for those of us who, for whatever reasons, had to grow up a little fast, had to be mature quickly, there's such a healing in getting to experience being a child, you know, or to that sense of being held, you know, unconditionally, and without some of the baggage that happens from being in a body and being in a relationship with other people in bodies, you know? So it's been so deeply moving, so deeply moving. And part of that has been, you know, reconnecting with the spiritual legacy of my ancestors as well, you know, and as a Nigerian, Liberian, I'm not Yoruba, but my ancestors basically told me, listen, girl, you go ahead and take this road of Ifa, and that's going to do the things that we need you to be able to do for us to really be able to transmit more of the fullness of the legacy that you came here to carry, you know? So that whole journey of coming into Ifa and discovering things about my ancestors that, again, I felt all of my life, but didn't have any, I just didn't have the specific memory and knowledge of like, oh, I come from a line of ancestral priests. Oh, I come from people that knew about herbs and all kinds of different methods of healing. I come from people who were enslaved here. I never knew that was a whole conversation in our family. Like, oh, you know, there's no one in our family that was enslaved in the US or anywhere else, you know, in the diaspora. That was a belief that we had, you know, and so through Dream, my ancestors came to me and said, no, actually, that's not the case. We were in Texas, you know, and this is what we did to survive in that place. So there's just endless layers, but those have been some of the deepest, most, what's the word? The healings that have really restored me to a sense of centeredness and sacredness in myself in this human body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And everybody has a unique journey of being in a body. And do you have any stories about your personal experience of your body and embodiment?
Oh my goodness. I remember when I was in college, I was dating someone I had no business dating at the time. But one of the things that really struck me about her, she was a dancer. And, you know, so we would be hanging out and she would drink whatever she was drinking, juice or whatever. And she'd be like, wow, I can really feel that juice, you know. And I was like, what is she talking about? What are you talking about? You could feel the juice going through. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, that level of awareness of being in a body, that was, I think, maybe one of the first times that it really struck me that it was possible to have that level of awareness internally, you know? And as I mentioned, I had so many injuries and a surgery. I spent, you know, a year having a knee surgery and then recovering, and I had back spasms chronically. It just like this whole saga. So as a young person, my relationship to my body was one of like, let's just make it to the next moment, you know? And every time I would try to do something kind of sporty or active, I would get injured or some physical thing would stop me. And so for me, you know, I thought like there was a lot of, what's the word? Containment. I had my early experience of my body was one of just like containment and, you know, survival. And a lack of awareness, a lack of body consciousness. So it took a very long time to come into that. You know, it was pretty much when I hit 30, that was when my awareness started to expand, when I got interested in the Art of Jin Shin, which is an energy healing modality that totally changed my life because it showed me a whole perspective realm that I had not been aware of. You know, I'd had, you know, acupressure sessions or things like that, but this, you know, getting to actually study and to be able to work on myself in this way was life-changing, you know? And so that was the beginning of my embodiment journey, I would say, and then getting to a place of learning Qigong and starting to practice that on a daily basis. That took me to a new level where I could say, what is it to be in this flesh? What is it to really inhabit myself more fully on a physical level, and to understand the relationships between this physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. Like, what is that, And to be able to actually turn my gaze inward and say, you know what, now I can feel that juice. Now I can feel whatever it is, I can feel that with awareness in a particular way, like the awareness, that is what has changed. And I feel like I'm at a point now where every day I engage with my body, whatever is happening, and sometimes when people have had a history of having a lot of pain, there's a way that there can be anger or frustration with your body. And I have to say, I'm thankful I haven't experienced that, because this thing keeps getting me through, it keeps getting me through, and I can feel this essential health in myself, that no matter what's going on, I know that I can always return to that, And so having that sense of a presence, the presence of health in my body that I can touch, that has also been a really important foundation for my sense of embodiment, because I know I can always go back there. Oh my goodness, this pain is terrible. I can still go back there. I know it's not going to last forever, And one more thing I'll say about that is this thing about that actually relaxing is the key to riding the waves of your body and really being in the deepest state of embodiment. That was a mind blower for me. It's kind of like swimming, right? Like if you're trying to swim but you're stiff, it's just not really going to work. And I actually threw my back out trying to swim because I was so tense, And so to learn what it is to actually relax and soften, especially for me, I've been shaped by trauma in a way that has had me physically armor, like using my muscles as a source of like guardedness and hypervigilance, which is a pattern that I still have, and I'm still shifting. But to come from that, to be like, oh, wait a minute, I could actually relax and that's better, is just mind blowing. And it is better. Sometimes it means you feel more, but that actually is what we came here for, is to be able to feel fully, whatever it is, whether it's delicious and wonderful or whether it's trashy and unpleasant. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate being able to have that presence of mind and being to be able to relax and soften. What is it to soften in your body, to soften in your mind, to soften in your spirit, to soften, in all of your places? That to me is like embodiment gold, And so it's also about every day I'm inviting myself to, I get to be soft, I get to be soft, and the world won't end, Yeah.
Yeah, just you talking through that, I felt like allowing myself to soften a little bit, just hearing that.
Yes, yes. What a miracle that we get to be soft, even though things are wild in the world, and we have our own wild experiences, and all of those things are true. And still, we get to have the experience of softness.
So your Qigong classes have been such an important part of my own healing journey, and especially when it was sort of like the rock bottom pandemic days I was going through, and we did that 100-day Qigong challenge.
Yeah.
And just the daily practice helped me open up so much to the awareness of the subtle energy movements in my body. Could you share a little bit about your own experience with your Qigong practice?
Yeah. So I first encountered Qigong in 2013 when I went to a retreat, and there was someone there who was part of the staff offering healings, Baba Kevin, out of Philadelphia. And he's an amazing healer, Black man. And, you know, one of the days he's like, let's do some movement. And he just started doing what I later came to know as cloud hands and different movements. He's been a practitioner for over 30 years, and has experienced profound healings through practicing Qigong. And so that was my first exposure to it. And I just like, we did maybe 10 or 15 minutes of practice together, and I just felt something. And I was like, what is that? What's that? You know? So that was the seed that was planted, and it stayed with me, but I didn't kind of really start to get a little bit more focused on it until 2016, 2017, when I met my next teacher, Ilyas Kashani. And as part of an Islamic healing retreat that I was doing over the course of 18 months. He also has been a practitioner for decades, and so we would practice every time we got together. We had a set that we were practicing in between. And I just felt so much better on a daily basis with the practice. You know, it really facilitated, as you said, just like a deeper level of awareness, you know? And I found that where I would have these like energy crashes over the course of a day, or if I didn't get enough sleep, it was going to be a hard day or whatever it was. If I just spent that like 10 minutes in the morning to do some practice, my whole day was better. And it brought a real stabilizing energetic force into my life, as well as really giving me an opportunity to feel myself in a different way, you know, to be like, oh, I feel that channel. I feel that thing. I can, you know, it added to the energy practice that I was already doing, which wasn't a movement practice, but to have that movement also helped me to have more tenderness for myself. It again helped me to believe that softness was a viable option, you know, in a physically armored body. And so I just have pretty much been hooked since then. And I had a car accident in 2018 that, you know, my life was spared. It was very much one of those moments where it's like, but for the grace of the divine, there's no reason that other reason that I survived that. And afterwards, I was like, I want to add to my Qigong experience. And so I took some classes with my next teacher, Catherine Komidar, and learned the Dragon and Tiger set. And again, I had that experience of like, every time I would do it, it was a noticeable difference, and it really facilitated me healing more quickly from, you know, all the little injuries that I had as a result of the accident. So it basically, you know, I'm hooked on it because every time I practice, I feel it, and it makes a immediate and noticeable difference, you know, for me. So that was how I kind of got to this place that I'm in at this moment. And I've been practicing mostly daily it's been about 6 years now. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed when I did the daily practice for several months, the biggest change I felt was I felt my throat opening up, and I had just started coming back to singing, and just feeling like, wow, the energy blocks around my singing are opening up more and more without even practicing singing. And
That's one of the things I love about Qigong and other styles or frameworks around energy, is that they do what you need them to do. You know, it's not a like, well, this is what happened for me, so this is what's going to happen for you. It's always amazing to hear the specificity of how the same movements move through each of us totally differently, in terms of what manifests as a result of them. So that's incredible. That's really incredible.
And I actually don't know really about Sheng. Is that what it's called?
Jin
Jin
Shin.
Shin?
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would love to. I absolutely love Jin Shin. And so here's a real simple thing that anybody can do immediately to have an experience. Hold your fingers. So Jin Shin is basically in the form that we have it now, was organized by this man named Jiro Murai in Japan in the early 1900s. And it's quite an amazing story. He was a young, wealthy man, and he got very ill. And none of the doctors could tell him really what was wrong with him. And they told him, we don't know what's wrong with you. You're going to die. And so he went up to his family's mountain house to do that. But he had also been really interested in sages. So he had read a lot of things. He had seen a lot of images of sages, and he noticed that they were always doing something with their hands in the images. And so he's like, well, I have nothing to lose, so I'm going to do that and see what happens. So he practiced these different finger positions. And over the course of 6 days, he got colder and colder and colder. And he just thought, okay, this is it. I'm dying. And on the night of the 6th day, he got very cold, and then he got super hot and he passed out. And the next day he woke up and he felt totally different. And whatever ailment he had, it seemed like it had receded. And he was actually able to leave from this mountain house he thought he would die in and go back to the doctors. They did all their little tests and they're like, we don't know what happened, but you're fine. And so he dedicated the rest of his life to figuring out what had happened, So Jin Shin is an art that I would say similar to Chinese medicine framework around, we don't talk about meridians, we talk about safety energy locks. So 26 centers on each side of the body that have different physical, spiritual, emotional purposes. And so the idea is that in certain combinations, just simply putting your hand, you don't have to squeeze, you don't have to do anything dramatic. Just putting your hand on these different safety energy locks facilitates harmonizing your energy body. And through that, whatever healing it is that's needed for your body happens, So, for example, in our hands, all our hands are connected to, each finger is connected to a different energy systems and what we call attitudes in Jin Shin. So your thumb, for example, what do you see small children doing? They suck their thumb, they hold their thumb, because this is actually directly connected to the energy of anxiety or worry. Stomach, spleen. Your index finger. I saw a newborn baby, literally maybe a day or two old, gently hold his little finger like this. He had a bowel movement, and as soon as he was done, he let it go. This finger is associated with fear, the attitude of fear, but it's associated with kidney and bladder energy. Middle finger, I think we can guess, anger, associated with gallbladder and liver energy. This ring finger, sadness or grief, that's the lungs and the large intestine. And the little finger is heart, and also the attitude is effortfulness, when you're trying really, really hard, or pretense, that sort of energy. And that's heart and small intestine. And so just by gently holding each of your fingers, you harmonize those organ systems and those emotional attitudes within yourself. And so it's a really profound practice. Also, holding your thumb can help you sleep. If you're someone that has sleep issues, that's a really great thing to do. I remember one time I was probably one of the angriest I've ever been in my life. Some friend had, done a big betrayal, and I was out and I was yelling in the street, and I got on the bus and I was yelling on the phone. And I was like, whoa, 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 this is not how I want to be moving around in the world. And so I held my middle finger, and it immediately took all the heat out of my body and just calmed me all the way down. So these are very simple things, but they're very profound. And in fact, a lot of things that, practitioners of Jin Shin would talk about, we do naturally, right? People often hold their fingers, right? People sit on their hands. Well, there's energy points right underneath your sit bones that have the effect of energizing you, right? When people put their hands on the back of their head like this, there are two energy points at the back of your head that have the effect of relaxing you and also helping your brain, So there's all of these ways that it's not something new by any stretch. Is actually just a way of organizing this ancient wisdom that has always existed and that human beings have intuitively been using in different ways. So that's a little bit about Jin Shin. It's very exciting. I love it. It's personally been very powerful and significant for me. And that's something that I practice every day.
How would you say the physical body and the energy body are connected?
Well, that's a really interesting question. So if I talk about it from a Jin Shin's perspective, we're talking about density. We're talking about layers of energy that densify into what we call this physical body, right? That's really the distinction. So energy, pure energy, is very subtle. It's very light, right? And so as we form in the womb, it's the process of these increasing layers of energy kind of wrapping around each other in a specific order that creates the density of the flesh, right? And so this flesh is ultimately a dense manifestation of energy, right? And so we in our human body have access to that light, that kind of pure essence energy, but we've got to mediate it through this density. So that is how I would sort of begin to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned through your path working as a healer facilitator?
Yes. What have I learned?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. So many things, so very many things. I think one of the things I've learned is that it's really hard for people to be compassionate with themselves. I'm often struck at how much time I spend just like, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to bring in some compassion for the ways that we responded to things that we feel ashamed about or that we were shamed about. And so that's something that I've really learned, is that self-compassion is so much the root. It's so much a root that all of us need to be able to touch in order to have some grace with ourselves for the ways that we survived whatever it is that we survived, and are surviving, right? And to be able to move towards something more than that, So that's one thing that I've learned. I've also learned that people are incredibly beautiful. Every time that I get to be with someone in a healing space, it's always profoundly moving. Especially when I get to do table work with people, to be able to feel beyond whatever words there are, but to feel directly into somebody's energy field. And, one of my gifts is that I do perceive, sometimes I catch people's memories, or I catch narratives that are circulating in the flesh, or, things like that. And so I've often learned things about people just from touching them that they never would have said, right? Or even thought to say, that's connected to the thing that they came seeking healing around, And to feel how that's actually moving in someone's body is really quite a profound profound experience. It's always, I'm always like so touched by it, you know, and also that all of us, no matter what condition we're in, we do have health, right? We do come in with a health that is always there, no matter what kind of medical labels or emotional, mental health labels we have. There is always a natural harmony and health that exists in every single body. And to be able to attune to that is so amazing, you know, and to invite people to attune to that in themselves and to really notice, like, sometimes when we're in the midst of navigating whatever, we can be so narrow in how we're seeing it and how we're experiencing it. And what happens if we can attune to that bigger picture of our health, of our harmony, of our wholeness, and then from that point relate to the thing that's happening. It's transformative. And I live for that. That's like one of my favorite things ever that I get to be a part of, you know? So that's something else that I've learned. We all have health. We all have harmony, no matter what conditions we are moving through. And the other thing I would say is that healing is fun, you know? Like, it doesn't have to be this like odious, like heavy, I'm moving through my deepest trauma all the time, you know, kind of like, and I got to use my mind kind of thing, right? Like, actually, many times we need to get your mind out of the way. We just need to move past the mind and engage with that ancient frequency that all of us contain, you know, those ancestral frequencies that all of us contain. Hit us with the music, hit us with the movement, hit us with the story, hit us with, you know, the things that predate these modern frames that we find ourselves moving in, and call it advancement. You know what I mean? Like, I really believe that we have to go back to really experience what it is to be present in this now, in our wholeness, right? I don't believe we do it with these modern tools, right? We do it actually with these ancient frequencies that, yes, we live in a modern world, in a modern time, technology, blah, 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 all of that. But actually, the source is way back there at the beginning of time, at the beginning of the spark that led to all of us being here. So we get to be in that, and we get to be in that joyfully. You know, I think colonization has robbed us of so much, and it's robbed all of us of so much, right? Not only those of us who come from peoples who were colonized and who will continue to be colonized, right? But also the people who did the colonizing and who are doing the colonizing, right? And there was so much before that, and there was so much that that lived and strove to be here now. That is the through line that I feel we need to really connect to for for the highest liberation for all beings. That we got to go back, you know. So I've also learned that we get to have that in this now, and I get to bring that into what, you know, wherever I am and whatever I'm working with, right? You know, so those are some of, I think, the main lessons that I've learned.
Mm-hmm. And supporting people with mental health in your work, how would you say I mean, this is kind of a continuation of what you were just sharing, but how is the mental health tied to the physical body and then the energy body or spirit? Like, how do you see those all connected to each other?
Yes, they are all of a piece, you know, they are all of a piece. And sometimes we don't actually know what the source is of whatever mental thing is going on. Some, you know, yes, of course, we live in these oppressive conditions. So there's that, right? And what I find is that, you know, part of the the lie of ongoing colonization is it has us believe that we have the issue, when actually what's happening with whatever mental health issue, and I don't believe in diagnosis. I think there are times it serves a useful purpose, but for the most part, I don't believe in pathology. I think people are out here having very reasonable responses to the conditions, And so what is it to, first of all, recognize that it is not your problem. You are having a personal experience of an issue, but it is not actually your issue, There's that piece, right? And there's also this piece around what have we inherited, What are we carrying that is not ours, as someone who, and I think so many of us carry some measure of ancestral grief, right? That has an impact. Some people feel that in a very particular way that affects their mental health on a daily basis, But again, that's real different from saying, that's your problem. That's because you didn't da 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 da, right? That pathologizing of it, right? And I also think that the physical, we can be having mental experiences that are actually rooted in the physical, right? We talk a lot about the emotional impact on the body. So for example, as I mentioned with these fingers, if you're navigating grief, maybe you got asthma. You inherited some ancestral grief, you got you some asthma, right? Or maybe like you live in a chronic state of fear, which I have lived that, you know what I mean? And so your muscles are constantly tight. That there's a relationship between fear and your muscles. There's a relationship between grief and your lungs, right? And your bowels, right? And so it's also about understanding that everything is actually a relationship. There's nothing that happens in our these vessels, these vehicles, that is not in relationship to something else, right? And so part of my work is helping to discern what is the relationship that's actually unfolding here. Is it a relationship between you and the oppressive conditions that are most impacting you in a clear way? I mean, we're always impacted, but is that the root of the thing that's happening now? Is it ancestral? Is it environmental? Is it, so what is that relationship? And then how do we deal with that relationship to help it to be in a balance that actually works for you in the way that you want it to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really just a profound reframe to hear you talk about, instead of like in Western medicine, they focus on the disease or the diagnosis. Do you have any tips on how people can tune into the inherent health in all of us?
Yes. Well, so some of it's a retraining. It's a retraining of the mind because, our minds are very powerful. They are not meant to guide our show though, right? Like they're not actually meant to be in charge. They're meant to be in service of the heart, and the spirit. And that's what's guiding our show in alignment with the divine, right? So it's about helping yourself to have a mental reframe, because we got to learn how to shift the habit of looking for the disease, because it's a habit. That's all it is, right? And we know that embodiment is really about practice. We embody the things that we practice, right? So if you have practiced looking for the disease, invite yourself to practice looking for the health. And when I say look for the health, I say, some people like to sit and be still. If you're someone that needs to be in motion to feel your inside, do that. But give yourself just 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day, that's it. 2 minutes if you're pressed, and look for what is going really well. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'll be like, wow, I have this pain, but guess what? I'm walking. Guess what? I could talk. Guess what? I have use of my mind. Guess what? There's always a super ton of things that are actually going really great at any given moment, no matter what issue you're dealing with. So just practice focusing on those things, for a few minutes a day, and keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that, So that is one of the places that I would start. And not only with yourself, but with other people, right? So when people tell us, oh, I'm sick, or this thing is wrong, we have a tendency, our habit is to be like, oh, I'm sorry. Da, da, da. First of all, I don't know what that is in your life. That thing that is causing you suffering, that could be a breakthrough in your life, right? So I'm personally trying to get out of the habit of apologizing when people tell me that they're going through something difficult, So there's that, because again, it narrows our focus. Like, oh, I feel so you're good. And then we just stay there, right? So what would it mean just to, as someone that is close to you, dear to you, tells you they're struggling in whatever way it is, what would it mean for you to hear the struggle, and have compassion for the struggle and support however you can, and also to look at the health in that person? Look for the health, look for the harmony in that person, because you do it with yourself and you practice it with the people around you, so that we get out of just slipping into, sorry, oh, that sucks. Oh, pain is not pleasant. I don't know that many, some people are into it, but I'm not into it personally. I think many of us are not into it, and so there's a way that we could just be like, oh yeah, it sucks. And we stay right there. But what does it mean to actually go ahead and expand? And again, we come back to this idea of relationship. What is the relationship that is showing itself here? And what is the invitation of what we can pay attention to in looking at that relationship,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a reflex to hear someone suffering and say, I'm sorry. So I'm just imagining a different scenario of just holding space and being compassionate without saying, I'm sorry,
Yeah, yeah, it's real. I'm like, what else can I say that's not that? You know what I mean? And sometimes I just say, that sounds really hard, and I feel you in your suffering, because I think that's really what we're trying to say. And it's like, my heart goes out to you in this experience that you're having. So we can say that, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I learned something about you just reading your website, that you also have a history of writing and performance.
Yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit about how that's tied into your work and your healing work and your journey?
Yeah, well, I've been writing since I could write. And writing has really helped me survive some of all of the hardest things that I've experienced. And writing has, more than that, it's been the way that I've come to really know myself, is through the act of writing, and performing is something that I came into young. I think I came here with that thing, and I enjoy it. But really, I'm not someone who's like, oh yes, I want to be the center of attention, I don't have that thing. What I do have is, here's an opportunity to actually reflect something from the spirit realm that I like. Yeah, that. I'm here to reflect something from the spirit realm and invite, ultimately, any performance that I'm giving or part of. It's about, how can this be an invitation to whoever shows up to get closer to themselves, to get closer to the divine, to get closer to their wholeness and who they came here to be. That is what it's all about for me, And so if that is the fundamental theme of everything that I do, how is this serving all of us getting closer to our wholeness, all of us getting closer to being in that right alignment of what we came here for, right? Like, what else are we here for? We came here to be here for what we're here for, And so that's really how I think about it. And I think for me, what I've learned through all of my injuries, through so many things, is that it's through my experience. That is one of the primary way I would say that I get to offer that invitation, right? Is because people often ask me, how did you da 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 da? And through my story, I get to share the little bit that I have experienced and learned about what it takes to be or get closer or continue moving toward, that divine alignment. So anything that I do artistically is about that. And also I like to have fun. I know I came here to have some fun. So I want to have fun.
Yeah, I love that you shared that healing can be fun because, yeah, I feel like a lot of people really do just talk about how hard it is and the shadow work. And, so it's nice to be like, the shadow work's important, but having fun's important too.
100, as important, if not more in some instances, Yeah, we get to experience joy. And this beautiful podcast is about embodiment and pleasure, right? And so that's an essential part of also what we came here. We came with all these senses that we have to take it in, to feel, to touch, to taste, to have that experience of pleasure and enjoyment. You know what I mean? So to me, it's an essential component. And I don't ever want to be personally in a healing space that is only focused on the hard stuff, the digging it out of yourself, that whole thing. But yes, we got to do that. Some things do need to get uprooted. Some things do need to be transformed in whatever way, and it's that way. But a lot of stuff just moves when we're having fun. You know what I mean? You get to just feel yourself, feel your body without overthinking it when you're dancing. You get to just feel yourself when you're hearing that music, whether you're dancing or not, but to feel that beat, that rhythm inside of you, right? That is healing right there without your mental effort,
So what are some of your favorite ways that you find pleasure in your body?
I really love to dance. And I love moving. I love moving my body, I love to walk. I used to be really into weightlifting and like hardcore, calisthenics and body weight exercising, which was fun. I really had a ball doing that. And, that is not in the the service of my well-being at this moment to do that kind of movement. But anything that I love swimming, I love being in the water. And it took me a long time to feel comfortable in the water. But there's something so magical, again, about being held, and not having to be responsible. You know what I mean? Like, so we out here trying to be conscious and mind our boundaries, mind other people's boundaries, and, all of these things, right? That are important. And when you get in that water, you don't have to think about that. You know what I mean? Like, you could I'm here, the water is holding me. I can go ahead and swim around if I want to, or not if I don't want to. I could put my little floaty thing in here. It's just such a invitation to relaxation, like truly, 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 without the mental thing of like, is this balanced? Are you having fun? Are you, like that, all the anxiety that can come when we're doing something that's supposed to be fun, actually, right? If someone else is around. So I love the water for that. I love moving my body for that because it's mine. And I can go ahead and take a longer stride if I want to. I can go slow if I want to. I can lay down and just enjoy this beautiful surface that I'm laying on. I just love to just feel it. What is the, yeah, this is great, So that's a way that I like to experience pleasure. I love music. I love listening to music, learning about music, playing music. And I like being creative with people. I think that is like a a pinnacle for me of pleasures, being creative with people and also being in ritual with people.
What would you say is your favorite thing about your body?
Her resilience. She just keeps showing up. She just keeps showing up and showing up and showing up. And I love myself for that. I love this vessel for that. You know, day in and day out, she's there. Yeah. So that is my favorite thing. I love myself and I love and appreciate this vessel that I'm in. And I always want her to feel respected and appreciated by me. You know, I be eating my little things that I know I'm not supposed to eat and whatnot, but other than that, I think she knows. Yeah.
On your website, you share that you are, quote, interested in the inner revolutions we all experience and how they show up in relationship between our inner dichotomies, fierce and tender, hard and soft, seen and unseen. Could you share a little more about that?
Yeah. I've always been interested in the contrast. You know, there's something, I think, achingly tender about contrast, you know, and I have a dear friend of mine who, like, visually, that's the style that she gives off. You know, she'll wear like really tough looking leather vests, boots, you know what I mean? And then she'll have like the softest pastel colored hanky, you know what I mean? And I love that sort of combination. And I love all of these different combinations that we navigate because I think there's something really telling about how we live in those spaces, you know? And for example, well, it just so happens I'm thinking about and think a lot about what is it to be, I consider myself an introverted extrovert. So I love being around people. But it drains, it's tiring too, you know, and also I really love being by myself, you know, and so what does that mean about how I get to experience life in that in between, right? What's that relationship? What is balance in that relationship? What is self-respect in that relationship, you know? And so, yeah, those are some of and we all have our different kind of particular dichotomies that we navigate, right? For someone, it might be that, wow, they're really tough. They do something that takes a lot of like grit or whatever to do. You know, let's say maybe somebody's a firefighter, but then on the flip side of that, right? On the contrast of that, they really love being a clown. You know what I mean? So there's something about how the dichotomies that kind of define our lives, that is so rich. And I think especially for those of us who have third culture experiences, you know, who are the children of immigrants or who immigrated directly ourselves or, you know, things like that, we live in a state of dichotomy, or at least for me, you know, I have spent all my life in some state of dichotomy of here and there, you know, whatever the here is in the moment and wherever the there is in the moment. What does it mean for me to be an African who was raised here, right? And what does it mean for any of us to kind of navigate that bridge? You know, how do we live out what that is for us? And how does that affect the strategies that we've taken on for our survival, and the places that we want to shift something, you know? And also not just shifting away from patterns that may no longer serve, but also ancestrally, you know, who did you come here to be? And how does that relate to the here that you're living in? You know, that's the dichotomy, that's the contrast. So I just think there's endless richness there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there any other thoughts or stories that's coming up right now that you feel called to share?
Let's see. I do want to say one more thing about being a third culture person. I'm working on a memoir now, and it's taken me a long time to get to it. And in fact, the story that I thought I had about my life, complete life totally changed my whole perspective about what the story was. You know, my story of the snatch of leaving Nigeria at 5 years old with my mom, that was such a wound for me, such for a long time, because I understood it in a certain way, you know? And life gave me an opportunity to hear a different side of that story and that experience that changed everything for me. I went from, that's a wound to, wow, that was a miracle. You know what I mean? And so I just, and especially, you know, for those, our third culture selves, there's this tension of what is it, what is home? Where is home? You know? And when we go back to whatever home countries we're connected to, I know at least they have names for us, right? Like Liberians call it, oh, that's a Megan girl, you know? Nigerians, if they're being saucy, they're going to call you Oyibo. That's a white person. Or, you know, they'll say foreigner, but that's actually what it means, right? And so, and the way that can push you back of like, this is a place I feel in some sense, and yet here I am in this in-between of belonging. And so what I want to invite, you know, my fellow third culture people to is to really be in an appreciation for the what's the word? The synergy that you are. You know, the synergy that you are, how you talk, the words that you take from whatever languages you are in your ear, you know, and how you put them together. And I invite you to play with bringing all of that to wherever you are. You know, there was a while where I felt like there's certain pidgin words in pidgin, either Liberian pidgin or Nigerian pidgin, that was like, oh, you know, people don't understand that here, so I just leave it out of my vocabulary unless I'm in Nigeria or somewhere else, right? Or around people who understand those pidgins. I was like, you know what? Somebody said to me, why? Why? You don't have to do that. Just use it, you know? And you just do your moment of training for the people who are listening, and then that's it. And they understand what it is, and you move on, and you get to have that integration. So that's the main thing, is that we do actually get to have integration regardless of what they call us, you know, wherever it is, that we do get to be that cohesive version of ourselves, because there's a reason we are, you know, and we don't have to feel ashamed about what we don't know or what we didn't get to experience or the choices that our parents made around language that they did or didn't speak to us, you know? So yeah, I want to say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like growing up speaking multiple languages, like there's always one word that fits perfectly in one language and there's no other translation in other languages. So I do that too, where I'm just like, let me just drop in this other language real quick to describe something. And it requires like 3 sentences in English to describe what it means, but
exactly. Yes, 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 yes. And we get to be full in that expression.
So do you have any other closing thoughts?
My closing thought is just that we get to believe in ourselves. You know, we get to believe in our wholeness, and, you know, there's a powerful narrative of brokenness that permeates, you know, and I think about this a lot because, you know, people will be like, I was broken. And I think that that is a real feeling. It's not, I think it's a real feeling. Right. And so how to hold that still in the context of you do still exist in a wholeness, you know, even when you feel broken, even in the places where your experiences of life has created that feeling in you, you do still get to attune to this health, to this harmony that is your wholeness. It's still there, even beyond that sense of brokenness. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So where can people find out about your work, and do you work with people online? Or?
I do. Yes. Get at me. Evolutionaryheart.com. That's evolutionaryheart.com. Something I tickled with on my website is I actually have a resonance check video. It's just like less than a minute, but it's a chance for people to just hear my voice and, catch my vibe and see if it's something that might be interesting to them. But all the different realms that I work in, most of them are, not all, but some of them are represented there. And if you have a feeling that we might be a good fit for the place you are in your healing, please get in touch.
Amazing, Terna. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your magic, and just really grateful.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for inviting me to be here and part of this.
All right, I'm just going to close this session and seal the magic and medicine. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or on YouTube, and feel free to leave any questions, other topics you'd like to hear about in a future episode, or anything else you'd like to share in the comments. Please leave a review for the podcast. And if you'd like to go deeper in the conversation in our inner circle, you can join our Infinite Earth Body Collective Patreon. You can see the link in the show notes. And thank you again so much for tuning in, and see you in the next episode. I feel